5 ways to get hired by a bad company. So, how to get hired by a bad company? Well, I think one way to get hired by a bad company is to pick the company with a great office. And some might say, a company with great office, what could possibly be wrong with that? I mean, great office is a great office, right? Well, I would advise to be careful because a great office can take your attention away from other important matters, like salary or possibility to develop your skills. And I know what some of you might already be thinking. He's only saying that because he has a crappy office. And I can tell you for sure we have a great office, and I even took some photos to present it today to prove you that we have a great office. So the argument is not based on bias or my personal bias. Okay, so what are other great ways to get to hired by the bad company? Well, a lot of people like to work for the great brands. So what could possibly be wrong about working with a great brand? Like we all love to work with those big US companies, startups, and internet giants, and so on and so forth. But here's the reality: why a lot of people come there to work on high impact projects and things that millions of people use every day, oftentimes, like majority of that project is actually not that high impact and might be actually quite boring. And moreover, those companies oftentimes, not always, so do your job, do your own homework, do your own research, but a lot of those companies are actually using a lot of legacy technologies. So for example, if I ask you, hey, would you like to work in PHP? Then probably majority of the people would not be interested and only minority of the people would raise their hands. But if I ask you, hey, would you like to work for Facebook? Then suddenly many more people would be interested and might be raising their hands. So here's the catch. Majority of the code in Facebook is written in PHP. So big brand, not necessarily interesting project, not necessarily interesting technologies, but do your own research. And I know what some of you are thinking. I'm only telling you that because I don't work with interesting brands. I don't work with the strong brands. So I brought you this slide. Even for we working in the blockchain space, but even for people who don't work in the blockchain space, I'm pretty sure they can recognize one or two brands here. So we work with some of the greatest brands in the blockchain space on some of the most interesting projects. I still argue it's not the reason why you should work with us. So, well, a lot of people say now, okay, Marek, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're telling. We should not be easily confused by a big brand or great office. We should pick the company with the highest salary, right? Well, after all, it's important how much I'm gonna earn. And if you want to know how much you're gonna earn, you just need to know you just need to multiply the salary you're gonna get on your job offer by the amount of time, by the amount of months that you're gonna work for the company, and you know how much you're gonna earn, right? Well, here's the catch. In some companies, what you might find is you get the initial salary, but there is no much room to grow. In other companies, when there is an opportunity to grow your skill and grow your position in the company, and that is reflected in the salary and the compensation, you can actually earn much more during your lifetime in the company. And again, to give you an example from our company, we have Adventure Path, and every half a year you have an opportunity to grow, to become more senior person and have a higher salary. And if you're learning faster, there is a special fast track for you. And we help you all the way through. You get a mentor, and we really help you do a sustainable development rather than just extraordinary for working after hours and all that stuff. So now don't be fooled by big brands and offices. Check the salary, check the opportunity to grow. I think the choice should be now easy. Or is it easy choice after all? Because still the big question is, what kind of technology would I like to work with? Should I work with PHP or Java or C# or TypeScript or whatever else? Well, a common way to pick the technology you want to spend your next decade or so, spend your career with, is to pick the popular technology. And what could possibly be wrong with that, right? Well, here's the thing. And I can tell you, I'm a little bit older probably than most of the people here on the meetup today. I spent almost 15 years in the industry, over 20 years doing software development. I'm still young, I'm still in my 30s. Probably most of you are younger, not all of them, not all of you though, I guess. But the thing that you start noticing when you're around a little bit longer is those technologies that goes in cycles. They start, they're being created, and they have their springs and summers and falls, and one day they land on graveyard technology, and not many people are very interested in. So some choices that seems to be very interesting, very very tempting, because like Java or C# are super popular technologies. Like, yeah, but if you start investing in learning Java and C# today, and C# and Java start to decline in following years, you might soon find yourself on the market that has a lot of Java and C# developers. And when you were looking at those seniors guys and architect guys, how much they earn, in 5-10 years, when you get there, you actually might earn a lot less, because there are just plenty of people there. So what I love to do, and what I would advise to anyone who is adventurous, is to invest in those technologies that are on those early days, like artificial intelligence, blockchain, or in our community, front-end community, JavaScript community, invest in TypeScript, which is a fast-growing technology, or go for Rust or Elm or Go. There is plenty of those technologies on the rise. And if you get really, really good over time, in 5-10 years, when they are at the top of the hill, you're the top expert in this technology. And it's a time when you have the most interesting jobs, doing the most interesting things for most interesting brands, and it's a time when you earn the big bucks. So one might say, Marek, I understand what you're saying. Don't be fooled by the office, don't be fooled by the brand. Pick the company with technologies that have a future, and pick the company that allows me to grow. Is there anything else? Well, there is one more common way of thinking that I think can be very, it might be a little bit somewhat dangerous when picking your career. I should pick the company with the best skill in X. So there's a lot of those companies. We are the best Ruby company in Poland. We are the best Python company in Poland. We are the best React company in the world, right? So what could be possibly wrong with working with the best people in particular field, right? You learn fast and all that stuff, right? Well, here's the thing. I would always pick the company with a strong engineering culture over the company with really strong skill in particular technology. So I would look already on the interview process. Am I being interviewed? Is the company asking me, what are the functions in the documentation of React, and what is the arguments that function take? Or do they ask me to solve problems and do actual coding on the interview? Or is the company expect me to work in particular field, just doing React components all day long for the next couple of years? Or do they look for versatile people, the kind of people who can do a little bit of front end or a lot of front end, but also a little bit of back end? Do they allow you to grow front-end developers into full stacks? Do they allow to grow full stack into DevOps? Do they take care of their own automated deployment? And are they expecting me to know things, or are they expecting me to learn things quickly? And finally, I would look at things like, am I gonna have a mentor and I'm gonna be on my own with my learning and grow, or someone gonna help me? Or am I responsible for a piece of code, or we all are responsible for a whole project? And finally, I find a very good trade if the company has some open source that is popular and used widely. That's usually a good sign of a strong engineering culture as well. So here we go, my friends. Don't be fooled, and do your research, and let me know if you agree. Do you have any questions? Would you like to add something, or do you hate it? Do you disagree? Would love to hear your feedback. And I think we need Piotr back. Piotr is coming back.
Thank you, Marek. Very interesting subject. Very interesting. Actually, know what you're talking about. We recently also had this kind of questions in my company. However, there are some possible questions from our audience. Dustin, for example, asked you, how about React? Would you invest in React?
So I'll tell you about React. So React is that interesting technology. I mean, definitely Vue is fresher and more interesting technology, but we didn't go for Vue in our company. We went for React. I would find Angular to be overcomplicated and too heavy for majority of the cases. I guess, if you work for Google, yeah, Angular make a lot of sense, but for most of the projects, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think React is very interesting for us because it's very simple. In fact, if you're a clever guy, you can learn React today with hooks. You can learn the whole React like in a day or maybe a week at most. And it really helps you. And our company is not very focused on building front ends. We are focused on building blockchain related things. And blockchain related things oftentimes require front ends. So we pick React because it's fast to learn. And if you're already a good engineer and you know how to build things and how to build high quality code and how to do testing, then you can just learn it very quickly. So again, I would argue that the question should not be, is React the right technology to invest, but am I using the React in the right way?
Awesome. I think it answers the question, and the regular question and answer. So how about Vue? Have you tried with Vue? Is it also possible to learn in one day Vue.js?
Well, the truth is we didn't really took a closer look at the Vue. We did do a very the opposite of deep, like a very shallow look at Vue on several occasions. Yeah, so I think it's an interesting technology. If you're, for example, a front-end company, or if you are a company that heavily invests in front-end, then Vue might be a good choice. Definitely. So it's not a yes or no. It's rather how you use Vue or React rather than is it Vue or React for me.
Exactly. I would agree with you because this kind of discussion, what technology, is not really meaningful if we don't know for what we apply that. So the last question from Michał Duszak. Good salary when you are left on your own, or bad salary while you're under a good mentorship?
Well, again, I would rephrase the question a little bit. So I would say, what are the possibilities to grow? And that's the most fundamental question for me. And the second, also very important question, will the company gonna notice when I'm gonna grow my skill and compensate accordingly? I think those are the two questions. So if you have a good mentorship, I would always go for good mentorship and a good growth, unless the difference in salary is too drastic. But like a good companies with good mentorships rarely would undervalue developers too much. So I would rather go for that. And finally, something you can consider if the company has a really good mentorship and but not very good salary is to go for that company to spend there like a year or two and then go for other companies or shorter or half a year. And I think that's also, once you're inside the company, you can also give the feedback to the company. Hey guys, I really love working with you, but it seems, the salary is below what the market offers. And, what are the possibilities here? Yeah. So it's always a challenge because market is very versatile, and yeah, the differences in salaries are pretty wide. But
of course,
especially in the early days, I would of your career, first years in your career, I would always emphasize on growth, skill set, mentorship, and strong engineering culture. This is something that is most often missed, most often looked into not enough.
I'm happy you mentioned the last one, the engineering culture, because I also had this experience which actually helped me to grow in the long run. because the first company which I joined happened to be a company with a strong engineering culture. It was in the end of 2013. Okay, Marek. So last question for you, because there was
one more.
From Davidos, and he asks, how do you deal with competition from big companies like IBM, Hyperledger, Fabric? I think those are the first choice for big financial companies. How can ETH, custom dev with React, etc., compete?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a great question. I would. It's too easy to answer though. Like the truth is, all the interesting things in the blockchain space happens on Ethereum or similar blockchains. It's Ethereum, then there is a long pause, a long space, and then there is maybe 3, 4, 5 different blockchains that together adds up to like 10 or 20% of everything that happens. Like Ethereum is 80%. So it's really easy because we're really good. We started early, and like 3 years ago, we started when Ethereum was just starting out, and we were able to grow as a company with the community, with all those startups from San Francisco, from Berlin, from London, all those great companies. We know them and they know us. So they oftentimes they refer to each other, and they just reach, hey, Marek, I have this and that problem. I need a couple extra hands for work. So we are a very natural place to go for them. On the other hand, the big companies like IBM build all those Hyperledger fabrics and all that boring stuff. And the truth is, we're still looking, but we didn't really see any interesting production implementations. And the reason is because blockchain is in this very early stage, and those companies in those technologies in those early stages, they usually take off in startups and smaller companies that kind of want to redefine their business models. They want to build something new from scratch. They want to destroy status quo. They want to disrupt, right? IBM don't want to disrupt everything. All they want to do is they want to keep the warm asses sitting on their warm chairs. So they're not taking risks. They're not making big innovations. They just go to companies and say, hey, we have this new blockchain thing. What you want to build with us? And people are like, I don't know. You tell me, what's blockchain good for? Oh, what's blockchain? How about we do this? No? How about we do that? No? And then they were in this mode for a couple of years now, and they really didn't build a lot interesting stuff. So
maybe they just buy the small companies in order just to prevent them from building something new.
Like it's part of completely different presentation that I already did, I think last year or 2 years ago on Worcester.js. But digital camera was built in Kodak. Kodak bankrupt because of digital camera. The first smartphone was built by Nokia. Nokia bankrupt because of smartphones built by Apple and companies in partnerships with Google. So it's here in these early days where you can work on the most interesting things with small companies. And one day, hopefully, some of those companies are going to become those big companies. And when it happens, you're going to work for them, but you're going to work for them not on those boring projects and not on those low impact projects, but you're going to work on high impact projects, interesting technologies, interesting projects to work on.